Do you know who the owner is?
We are live. I hear it echoing.
You've been live.
I've been mic dropped. All right. Call this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Johnson County Solid Waste District together at August 14th at 1:30 p.m. I'm going to do a roll call. Carla?
Kevin Walls,
Present.
Ron West,
Present.
Brian Baird,
Here.
David Lexi,
Present.
David Dimmars, Mark Myers,
Dittmers.
Dittmars,
Yes,
sorry.
John.
Dittmar. Dittmar. I thought, who's
David-
Dittmar?
John, I'm sorry.
That's the dad.
John,
Yeah.
John Dittmars, sorry about that, sir.
Here.
And Mark Myers and John Graham. Sir, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
Either, wasn't sure.
All right, thanks for everybody coming out to the special meeting. This basically discussion on the financing of the new building. I know Commissioner West has gone out and obtained two different proposals from two separate banks that we have. I think everybody has in front of them, don't they? Or maybe they don't.
We were not given anything, so what we passed out was from state board accounts.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I haven't even looked at that yet. So. And Lynn and I have since had a chance to meet with a financial advisor. Oh, there you go. And I think there's a little bit more to this than what we really see. I don't think there's a lot, but I think there's a little bit. Would you agree with that, Lynn?
Yeah, I would. We've got to figure out a path moving. Oh, can you hear me?
Or they can record. You guys have never said you couldn't
I
hear
don't
me.
think that
Well,
thing's
it's not
turned
working,
on.
Lynn. Yeah, you're not coming through the microphone.
If this is kind of we need to figure out a path going forward in terms of where we go. And we don't know how much to tell the architect to design without knowing how much our funding is. We don't know how much to put into the budget. As I told Kevin, we kind of needed to get a sense of where you all were going in terms of the amount. There are public bidding requirements, as you all know, particularly with the actual construction. There are also maybe some public bidding requirements for the selection of the financial institution that we haven't jumped through those hoops yet. And depending on what direction you want to go, you need to have a different attorney giving you advice in that. But we needed to have this collective knowledge of this group and say, give us some direction in terms of what you want to do. I think we're in a position to hire professional services agreements for both your attorney, your financial advisor, and maybe even the architect, as we talked about at the last meeting. And then with that, with the information that you have gathered, Ron, I think you've got some financial information that you all can get some idea about what your threshold tolerance is for financing, because we've got our budget coming up that needs to be put into the budget. So we needed to get going, even though it's a couple of years from now, right now, because we have the budget coming up. And so I think that's what's important for today's meeting is give us some direction, tell us what to do, and we're ready to go and get those people in place. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would, basically, I would ask the board to consider Peters and Associates,
It's Jeff. Yeah.
Jeff Peters,
Mhm.
to come in as a financial consultant, because he kind of woke Lynn and I up last week in a meeting with some things that we hadn't really considered. That would be my first proposal. And then if this thing moves forward with what Commissioner West has attained already, Lynn would have a conflict, as I would have a conflict on this. And we would like to officially ask Bill Barrett to step in for her during this process.
If there's any conflicts, obviously it's very important that there be no conflict of interest when you're talking about this kind of money. And I did reach out to Mr. Barrett. I think we talked about it 2 meetings ago. And he said he would absolutely help the district. He would help at the same rate he gets paid by the county. So I assume that's okay since you all pay him as the county.
Yeah.
And so he would agree to do that. You would need some kind of an agreement, which I could certainly prepare and send to him, and one for Jeff too, and then whatever you want to do with the architect.
So that would be the first thing, if somebody would want to undertake that, or thoughts on that? What do you think about that? Do you think safe and sorry, or?
I would assume that somewhere it spells out exactly what we can and cannot do, and based on that, how we move forward. I might have a question though on the public bidding, as you referred to it, Lynn, on the financing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure that maybe we didn't meet that. I don't know, in as much as this board directed me to seek that kind of information, and I did reach out to 5 lending institutions. And they all responded in one fashion or another, so.
I don't disagree. I just don't know, given the responses you got, if I should be the one giving you that legal opinion.
Yeah, but.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to go through that exercise again needlessly if there's no need to, so.
Correct.
But aside from that, yeah, whatever we have to do, this thing has become cumbersome at best, so.
I know. it
We
should
need to
be.
get it moving. I'm concerned your lease is gonna run out. And I don't know how receptive the landlord is to a small extension of that, so.
I don't know how receptive it would be at a reasonable price.
So I guess in that vein, I'll just move to table this till.
Well, let's hold on. Let's not
Yeah.
table it. Let's don't table it yet. Okay? I mean, we can, if this is a board decision, that's why we're assembled today, because I don't want to just push it again. I mean, if you want to take without legal counsel other than Lynn, you can pick one of these financial institutions. You can bring Bill Barrett in to represent us. You can bring Jeff Peters in to represent us to make sure that we've done this right. If we don't, then we back up a little bit. But if we don't do anything, we're just backing up right now.
But no matter what you do, you're gonna need a professional services agreement for an attorney to review it. You're gonna need a professional services agreement, I would think, for Jeff to work with Pat to make sure that we can finance it.
Yeah.
And fund it, right? To be able to do that. And I think you're gonna need an architect to design
Well, yeah,
it.
we've already met with him, but we just can't put him under contract.
Correct. And without the information that Commissioner West was kind enough to get, you didn't know if you could even afford it. And that's before you to now. I think you can make that decision. Yes, we can, or we can't, or.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clearly what you were looking at. Is it, is it financed? Can you do it? And I think you found information that says you can, right?
I've got funding and a funding amount. I won't disclose it at this time, but more than sufficient to build this building, a commitment on the funding amount that way north of what I expect us to spend. So from that standpoint, we've got the financing option covered. As far as the architect, we give him I guess, the physical dimensions of the building, and he draws it up, and if he comes back more than what we've got in funding, then he redraws it, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, but I think you probably have a sense that you're gonna get the funding that you needed, more than you wanted, right?
Yeah, we got plenty. I think we got plenty of funding secured. I always thought the question was going to be exactly how much the debt levy would be, because I wasn't sure how much the recycling district, I know they had like 400,000 or whatever to put towards it, and then some other funds also. So I think from a funding perspective, we're in great shape. It's just a matter of moving this thing forward at this point, get something drawn up so somebody can build their bid to build it.
Agreed.
If you look in front of you too, and I can have Pat speak to it, I gave you to the notice to the taxpayers, and again, this is just working with State Board of Accounts and what was put into a system based off of the fact that I know that Shelby County had 4.2 million And I believe their first year was 460,000 for their debt services. So based off of what I presumed was close enough to what we had talked about, which was about 2.5, we initially put in 350,000.
Where, 2.5 what, for the building?
That's what we had talked about when we were talking.
I never heard that. I always thought we were talking 1.2. That was kind of the number that I was working off of. Where'd we get to 2.5?
I don't remember 1.2.
I never
No?
heard 1.2.
Yeah, maybe I just assumed that. I don't know. I don't remember hearing 2.5.
I mean, just off the square footage alone of about a 10,000 square foot building. And I also know what Shelby County built, which we would be building something very similar because they actually based it off of plans that we had talked about before. So,
And yet theirs was 4 point something?
but that's because they had to do other things. I'm just talking about their building. And we already own the land. So they had to do other things because they're working with their highway department and different.
And I retract I think I got sufficient funding.
You've got a rate, so.
You will.
So my point being is that this has to be put in for September 1st, initially, of course, for submission, and then it has to be verified by the middle of October. And so I think that's where Pat was going to speak about some options.
Let's get one thing. I'm going to ask the board for a motion to move forward with Bill Barrett for legal counsel for this item.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Motion carries. Now I'm going to ask the board for a motion to engage Jeff Peters for financial advisement on this because it is a taxing entity.
So moved.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Okay. That's out of the way.
Thank you.
And now what are you going to say, Jesse? Before we got down that road, I wanted to get that established and done. And what do you have from any motions?
So I'll let Pat kind of explain, and obviously you are all involved in some way with finances, whether it be county, city, so you understand that it's kind of throwing out a number and then going down to what it is that the state says that number actually is. But that's very difficult because we're in the situation of not truly knowing our exact financing. So I'll let Pat take the wheel on it.
I think you have the notice of taxpayers in front of you. And there's a couple of things I just wanted to make certain you understand with that. The debt service, again, this is the notice to the LGF for our budget, as you guys have all done. We may make that 400,000 for the debt service only because we can always bring it down. We can't bring it up. And some of that will have to do with what the term of our loan is. It's going to be 20 years, 10 years, whatever. So, and then we have a maximum levy funds in here. And we talked about this in a meeting that was not an official meeting because we didn't have a quorum, but we had discussed the option. We're going to put it in front of you that we do an excess levy to assist the county with cleaning up some of this tornado damage that we have. And that we thought we would put into a special account that would be a board designated fund so that it can only be spent at the direction of the board. And then that would be $100,000. So that we would ask for an excess levy of that amount of money. Those were the two things that we have in here.
And Pat, you mentioned 400,000 because you were concerned they don't have 400,000 in front of them. So
What you have in front of you is 350. We thought about raising that to 4, just because we don't really know, and we can't after we submit this form, we can't raise it, but we can lower it. So whatever our financial advisor comes back with and says, let's make it this number, then that's what we'll make it. We need to do that before October.
So the board needs to weigh in on that for this excess levy. So I would ask you to look at that and either consider or not consider it at this budget cycle for the DLGF.
Because it has to be published, if I'm understanding the law, and I did read
Yes.
it, it must be published as a line item on the budget, or you can't do that. May I speak, sir?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
In just talking with Jeff, that's why I think the district needs a financial consultant, since you don't have a clerk. Since you don't have, you don't have a clerk, treasurer, things like that. It's just this board and staff. I think where Jeff came in and why Commissioner Walls and I met with him was what does an excess levy do to the taxpayer? And Mr. Peters advised me that if we did go to an excess levy that we don't have right now, on your typical house of a homestead of $162,000, it would result in 37 cents a year, I believe he said, to the average taxpayer if we did that. About 37 cents. And he said if we doubled it, most $1 would be, because what we have as a district is we have the entire countywide assessed value. We have the incomplete district. So when you do the levy, it's spread across what he said was 10,254,510 of AV. So that's why going max levy is just
So-
absolutely almost imperceivable in the tax statements. And that's what we wanted to know before we were sitting here today. What would that do to the taxpayer? It's about less than
State Board of
$1.
Accounts, actually, we had sat down and had the same thing. We are the lowest entity for taxing with the services that we provide virtually across the state, let alone,
Correct.
in Johnson County. So our services are for the county as a whole, and yet, we are very, very.
All
Well,
right,
you can see the
yeah.
tax rate right there. I mean, you can see what it would be even with those increases on there. And so spread across, as Lynn said, the entire county, the impact is.
The
Well,
negligible.
Pat, because this is a debt service levy, does it impact the other taxing units?
No,
Okay.
And that was also the comment we got from Mr. Peters.
A lot of comments.
Yeah, I just don't know enough to be able to give you enough, and that's why I think you need the financial
There's the walking
consultant.
guy right there.
Yeah.
Hi,
I
Mayor.
made it. How you doing?
Record please note, Mayor Myers joined by Zoom.
so I think the long and the short of that is our excess levy is going to be a negligible amount to our homeowners and the taxpayers that we have in the county. And understand that we intended that excess levy to go into a special fund that we can reimburse the county for some of the costs associated with tornadoes across the county. And the debt service is the debt service, and that will be whatever our financial advisor tells us between now and I think it's the finals in October.
Board have any questions for Pat regarding this? Or do you understand why we're doing this or why they're asking to do this?
I just, as I always say, is we can always say something's negligible, but when everybody does something negligible, it becomes something that's non-negligible. So anytime we start raising taxes, it affects more than just that one little entity at that one little time, because every time somebody else does it, it affects it. Somebody else does it, it affects it. Same way we're looking at the fire departments and all that. So I don't know. I think sometimes we call something negligible that's not really a true statement, I guess, because of everything that passes on with that, with everybody
So
else.
it's certainly not, I agree, it's certainly not cumulative, but as far as our budget is concerned and our tax rate, it did not move the needle of our tax rate.
No, and I understand. It
Okay.
just- Looking at the whole picture, it does make a difference somewhere. Does anybody ever come up with a percentage of the people in Johnson County that use the solid waste recycling district services?
I think it's available to everyone. Obviously, I'm sure that's not your question, Brian, but I think the more we advertise, the more we're in schools, the more we make that available, then there are more people. And with this new building and what we have in the building, it'll certainly make it more accessible to everyone and it'll be ours. So hopefully that will be.
But do we have an idea of approximately how many people in the county really use that service?
No, it would be very difficult to figure that out on a regular basis because of, I mean, we could stand there with a clicker. I can tell you that we have seen a exponential increase ever since the yellow and green bins have been taken away. But I can also tell you that we make a point of not advertising for things like our Talks Box and for other availability because we don't have the finances to cover if more people come to our programs because of the cost. We just don't have the resources to probably cover the amount of people that would like to use our services, especially the Talks Box. And as we move, and with the intention of moving that Talks Box with us, I totally see an increase in those numbers as people see that it's more accessible and more available. But, you know, those programs are extremely expensive. And it's very difficult to.
No, and I understand. I just, you know, down in my area, the question I get a lot is why are we doing this? It's really not effectual for people from my area.
We get people from your area all the
I'm
time.
just telling you what I
It's
hear.
the
I
more-
just heard it again at the breakfast the other day, so.
But what, I mean, what makes them say that? I mean, do they
I don't
recognize
know.
that that's the thing, a lot of people. Like Edinburgh is available to them, and that's why it's really hard to see those numbers as well. You know, there are available services, but just like anything else, it's not 24/7 the way it used to be.
Right.
For the reasons that this whole board knows.
And that may be the attitude.
And I think that's probably part of it. We certainly have run into that now that the green and yellow bins are gone. As I said, we have a lot of those comments that come out of White River a lot, because they would like it to be right in their backyard the way it was. And we know that, I mean, we don't have the finances to do that.
Right.
Which is why we do try and open on Saturdays, we switch to Wednesdays, we do anything we can to try and make ourselves available and accessible, but we still have to be within the parameters of our finances. But yes, and
This debt levy would not have anything to do with that. This would be in excess and it would be locked away. So it doesn't have anything to do with the regular operating budget.
Well, I was on a roll.
Yeah. I just wanted to kind of narrow back in there a little bit.
Get them all in all at once.
well, and I Commissioner Wilson can certainly speak to knowing how much these bins have cost for both storms and the needs of the people. I'm sure if we said to somebody, and again, I understand that's relative, but let's just say you pay the district $4 for all the services that you get all throughout the year. We know one bin alone and the time and the cost of all of that is so much greater than that. So yes, sometimes they don't see it until there's a bin sitting out in front of their house that is provided for, that we can then help, that we help manage, that we help maintain. Our scope is so much greater than recycling. And I think these storms have certainly helped a lot of people to understand that. But recycling is what people understand and what people see. And it's not until they have to get rid of that oil or they're moving or, you know, that they go beyond that piece. I think a lot of times.
So Pat, what's the maximum debt you'll be able to service?
Well, we don't know that yet. We don't know what the interest rates are. We don't know how much the building is gonna cost.
Well,
So-
no, I mean,
Well, I think
how much
this-
money will
I
you
think
be
we've
able
got-
to get under your
I believe
debt
between 350 and
service
400,000.
levy to finance the building?
I think between 350 and 400 right now.
400,000 a year,
Mhm.
you'll be able to generate towards paying the debt. So then at 2.5, you're only looking at 6 years probably or so, right, for financing?
Well, that depends on how far you want to push that debt out and how much you want to raise our levy to service that debt. I mean, it's obviously going to be a
See,
building.
that's where I'm getting confused. What my question is, how much debt can you service? Are you telling me that you could get an unlimited excess debt levy? I
No.
don't think so.
No, I
So
didn't
there's
say
got to
that.
be a maximum you can raise, right?
And that's why I believe between $350,000 and $400,000.
So then, based on that, a $2.5 million building, especially with the cash you've got on rainy day fund, you don't need financing more than 6 years, right?
Well, no. First of all, we have to think about the fact too, that we have to meet, we're going from a maintained somewhat building to a building that we would have to completely maintain ourselves.
Yeah, but
So
it's a
to
new
wipe
building,
out-
so maintenance should be practically nil for the first few years.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
we've
I'm
got
talking-
grass cutting, we've
Yeah,
got all
plowing,
kinds of, we just run, that's a very difficult thing to look into the future and see what that number is going to be. I mean, we obviously in the county have many buildings and should have some idea of what it would cost to maintain one a building. But
And we also receive our funding that we need to operate to get our max levy by having some of those dollars in our bank because of the way in which funding is done through state board of accounts and through the state.
yeah,
So-
I wouldn't want to take our general fund number, and we funded some of our levy through the monies we have in our general fund. I wouldn't want to take that down significantly just to fund part of the building. I mean, it's obviously a long-lived building, and I think we should fund that over some reasonable period so that we don't have debt service.
Well,
Like I
if
said,
you're
we can
generating
take that down.
if you're generating $400,000 a year in this excess levy,
No, I didn't say it's a different, that excess levy is 100,000. The debt levy is a completely different number.
And and also the state mandates what we can get for that excess levy. So it also all has to do with the past 3 years. I mean, I know the county went through.
so
the
now
same
you're
thing.
telling me your excess levy is only 100,000 a year?
It
That's,
may not even be that. It's probably closer to 70 if we're lucky. Because the state,
state determines what we can
Determines
have in
that.
excess levy, but that's a different, that's the amount of money we're gonna put to the designated fund for the board to assist the county with some of the tornado cleanups.
That's where I think Mr. Peters will come in and actually do a presentation and be able to better break that down for everybody.
it's
You'll
not-
know your exact numbers.
Yeah, it's not the excess levy that we're dealing with, it's the debt service levy. And that's, we'll get better numbers with that.
we can't, like this, the state won't do anything about debt services until we've actually talked to the bank and the bank gives us what's that word, amortization, a big word there, and says, here's how
Amortization.
everything goes, and then the state effectively looks at that and pushes that through, that we can't just
Okay,
come up with that.
You said on $160,000 home, it's going to amount to 37 cents a year.
That's that 100,000 that's what we're
Okay,
talking about. That's
so
the excess levy. That's not
what-
debt.
What's the amount of money in total? If it amounts to 37 cents a year on 160,000 AV, what's the total it's going to generate in a year?
That was the excess levy. Not,
Hey, I'm just, see, here's what I don't understand. You guys are jumping all over the place. I'm just asking a simple number. If you can
Okay,
tell me
that's a
that 37 cents will be
100,000.
generated on 160,000 AV, you know what the total AV in the county is. What's that number?
$100,000,
How much?
100,000. That's what that
100,000.
example was.
Okay.
yeah, and that's
But
not
that had
even what the
nothing
state
to
will
do-
guarantee us. Yeah.
That had nothing to do.
But you,
with,
then you said 78,000.
Right, because the state has a formula, and it's based off of 3 years, it's based off the AV. The county just had to go through the same exact thing last year. You have to put out a number that is basically higher, because if you don't, and let's say we put 60,000 and we could have gotten 70,000, they're only gonna give us the 60,000. But they don't know that until everything is certified and it's based off of the past 3 years. So Johnson County has exponentially grown far greater than any place across the state for the most part. So our percentages where the state's saying 4%, our percentages have fluctuated anywhere between 21 and 24%. So until everything is solidified, you can't know that number. But off of 100,000, which we would love to see, that number would be 37 cents.
So if you're gonna, one of the things that I run into when I was reaching out to these lending institutions, they wanted to know how much revenue you're gonna have available to service debt. You can't tell me.
No, I can tell you that the State Board of Accounts wants us to put in, they actually wanted me to go higher than what I put in. So
Yeah,
that is
but
why Pat is
you're talking about higher, but they're gonna give you lower.
because
What I'm
that's
saying to
what
you
the
is you
state
can't tell
averages
me,
out.
right now, you can't tell me how much money you're gonna have to service debt.
I can tell you
Tell
that
me.
they are allowing us to put, they are telling me to put into 420. We put in 350. Pat would like to see 4. It could be as little as 270. The state is saying to put it in there.
Jesse, I'm just simply asking you how much money you're gonna be able to generate to service that. That's what these lending
The amount that
institutions
is
wanna
needed.
know.
I guess if I have to give you a simple answer, I can't tell you. what
Well, if
the
you can't
state-
tell me, you can't tell them, and they're not gonna tell you what they'll do.
I can't tell you because we haven't picked a bank that will tell us that rate. If that bank tells us that rate, then I can go back to the state and talk to them. But because we have no rates set whatsoever, they won't do anything to give me an exact number. Because we have no rate set at all.
That's some of the conversations our financial advisor that we'll have for our next meeting.
Isn't our current certified levy 625?
Yes,
That's just the levy. Yeah.
that's
What?
your.
Our current levy is 625. If you want to know that,
Is
that's
what?
that 625,000. That's what it currently
Yeah,
is.
but that's to run the operational.
Correct.
Exactly.
And this would be on top of that. And Peter's guesstimated roughly 100,000. That's about as direct as I can get.
Well, if, let's just say it generates 100,000 and that's what you've got to apply to debt
No,
service.
that's not, that's the excess levy.
That's the excess because you're still, because right now with our 625, we're paying 100 and something thousand in lease payments.
Yeah.
So you slide that over.
What we're saying is our budget should go down depending on what year we're in. We may end up, if the building doesn't get completed, we may end up in part of the year with holdover rent and then part of the year with debt service.
Which is why they want,
So
that
that's-
first year is always higher than the consecutive years. So the first year comes in much higher than your consecutive years based on that table. But they can't give us that information because we don't have that information from the bank.
Okay.
And to further complicate it, but I don't want to, but honestly, under the statutes, you have to be able to say as a civil taxing unit that we are unable to carry out our functions unless they give us this excess levy. So you really kind of want to show
Yeah.
need, as you know, to be able to get it. And then they always say, well, you can let go of it later on. I don't know if there ever does let go of it, but you can't. So that's how.
So Ron, we're really talking about two completely different items. One is the excess levy
Right.
and one is debt funding.
Correct.
The excess levy is the 100,000. The debt levy is a completely different number.
And
And
what's
that's
that
the
number?
number that we will have from our financial advisor that
Okay.
will tell us it.
That's
And
when
it's-
he'll come in and actually tell us, since we've engaged him now.
I think bottom line is I want to make sure whatever funds that we go after and get for this building, maintain and continue to go for the building and nothing else. If we start using this money for other things, I'm gonna blow up.
Hold on, which money are you talking about?
Any money that we tax the people is in excess
The excess,
or raise taxes for.
okay, the excess, basically in simple terms, what that is being put in place for is for these large disasters. Okay,
Understood.
and that was only board can appropriate that money. No one else can. So that money accumulates, sets in a fund until we, unfortunate situation we have
That's
an
the
emergency.
excess.
That's the excess.
The debt service though is for.
Something,
The only
services.
civilian, that's
Right.
it.
And I think it's clear the message that I'm hearing and seeing, and the financial advisor says you designate it. It's not for salaries, it's not for
Right,
benefits, it is specifically for this project.
that would really,
And that's a showing that I
that would
think,
really crank me around that up.
yep,
as a taxpayer.
I've seen that from the board.
Well, and
Pretty
it's even
routine.
has a separate, I mean, debt services has its own budget and it is truly principal and interest. There's no other lines.
Yeah.
That can be put in.
any other questions?
No, not right now.
Thank you.
So I guess the question lies, the original piece, I guess we're talking about the financing. And I know Lynn probably can't advise on this, but would the board want to, even though it didn't go out for public bid from the funding aspect of it, but Ron did make from a board meeting, we did make the initiation for him to send out. He's only got 2 responses that are sitting right here in front of me. Does the board care to move forward with the lowest, or do you want to revisit that? I guess that's my question in the overall scheme of things right now.
Yeah, I think that it would be good for, since we've now retained professional services, both financial advisor and for the attorney, that we provide them with all of the homework that you've done and ask, may we accept these as the lowest responsive? Does it check all the marks? Because banking's a little bit different than everything else. So you don't have to do it all over again. And
I was trying to push it in, I was trying to get it done tonight, but I got
but I think they
checked
could,
up a little
because
bit.
they'd have to come forward with something, and I just, my ethical hat, I can't do that.
Okay,
I can't make that recommendation.
Lynn,
I'll try.
I do have a question though.
Yes.
If we're here and they have a quorum and that does meet the standard,
Yes.
can we have that be agreed upon if it
If-
meets that standard?
If they have a quorum and your attorney advises you that they've met all the public notice requirements, then the answer is yes. But I can't give them that advice today because I have a conflict.
These are what I've got. So you have to be-
Well, the only problem that I see now with what I procured is, if you're talking 2.5, neither one of these committed to anywhere near that. Their interest rates and term is all predicated on something much lower than 2.5. So they might be useless at that point. I don't know.
But at any rate, it's good to have those people teed up. I mean, in terms of your professional advisors and say, okay, here's a revised scope. Give us that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, we'd obviously go back with a different number and get a
Right.
response.
And if you put your levy in your budget, at least at this point, it's there, because if it's not published, you can't do it, even if you don't accept it. So you've accomplished some things, I think.
So should we move on that today?
I don't think there is any formal motion to move on that,
Okay,
other than direction that you just gave me to retain those services of those people to give you that advice. Correct. And never fear, I did get our farm rental lease of $626, so I got us covered there. We can't approve that though, because it's not wasn't advertised, but I do have our check.
board got anything else on the financing they want to add before somebody moves for an adjournment? Got any questions?
We need to get in September, right, so we can maybe have an attorney at that meeting.
Mhm.
As I said, I've already talked to him on the
Yeah.
assumption
Can
you
you
might.
just make sure he's here on that September
Sure,
meeting? Okay.
sure. And I'll have him reach out to Jeff now that we've both formally
Jeff will
retained
be
him.
here as well. Jeff will be here as well.
I can ask him, sure.
And we will also still have to have an in-person forum for that meeting because.
It's financing.
We're talking about financing, so.
Correct.
That's the only topic.
Yeah, I was gonna have Annette make some more.
Okay,
September the 13th, Charlie?
That's the only copies.
Hmm?
That's the only copies.
mm-hmm.
Rebecca, you're-
Second Monday, September 11th.
September 11th.
It's
It's a nice day.
Nice day.
Need a motion, Kevin?
Need a motion to adjourn.
Yes, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we got first, second, we're out of here. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
The motion was by
John and
Lexi
David.
and then John seconded.